It's not complicated. Nick Foles, the starting quarterback at the moment because Carson Wentz is hurt. And when Carson Wentz is 100% healthy, he will be the starting quarterback again. And by 100% healthy, that means next year. I have a hard time believing that Carson Wentz at this point is going to be back this season. We'll see. The reason why I'm saying this is this. So, last week, Doug Peterson kept going back and forth and couldn't figure out what he wanted to say, whether Carson Wentz was going to play again or whether he needed 3 months to heal for this stress fracture in his back. On Monday, all of a sudden, Carson Wentz is getting a little healthier. He's recovering a little quicker than anticipated, and the team didn't put him on IR. How I'm reading into this situation, hey, I could be wrong, but the way I'm looking at this is, it's just some gamesmanship. At this point in the proceedings, you're not going to sign somebody onto the team, so you might as well just keep Wentz on the roster at this point. You're not bringing somebody in week 15 or week 16, I should say. And the other thing is, it's gamesmanship. Like, playoffs are going to come around. You don't have Carson Wentz on IR. You want to put that thought in the back of that opposing coach's mind when they're game planning that Carson Wentz may play. The reason why I'm saying this is because I remember how pissy Doug Peterson got earlier on in the season about all the Carson Wentz questions about when he was playing. And Doug just didn't want to answer any questions. Then he admitted, why he wouldn't really answer him. He said, I didn't want the opponent to have a competitive advantage by knowing who was starting. So I kind of think that's what all this is about. I don't think Carson Wentz is going to play again this year based on what I've been seeing and what I'm reading. But we'll see. If you watched the film studies that Brent and I were doing, there were 2 weeks in a row where we're trying to figure out what was going on with Carson Wentz. Because ever since the bye, the accuracy was wavering. He didn't look like the same quarterback. He didn't have the same confidence. Standing upright in the pocket, not really moving around. He just looked really uncomfortable. And I thought he was just having some trouble with mechanics. He was having trouble with the weight transfer. He wasn't getting through his throws. And then we found out what the real reason was for. I was trying to dig deeper than just the knee because I was seeing things that weren't just the knee. So at this point, 21 touchdowns, 7 interceptions on basically a fractured back and then coming off the ACL, that's incredible. But I'm looking at the next 10 years of this. I'm looking at the future. I'm looking at if you put Carson Wentz back in there in a playoff game and his back isn't all the way back healthy and he's taking a beating against Chicago and he gets hurt again, nah. Just stick with Nick Foles at this point. Get Carson healthy. Get him the entire offseason and get him back in 2019 100%. While you trot Nick Foles out there and see if you can rekindle the magic that you had from last year. Because Nick Foles right now is better than the Carson Wentz we saw since the bye. And I don't know how much that back's going to heal. So I think Doug Peterson's playing a little gamesmanship with Carson. He's going to announce, each week Nick Foles is a starter. I think that's where this is going. I could be wrong, though, so we'll see. Maybe miraculously Carson Wentz heals, and that 3-month window that Doug Peterson said last week, all of a sudden, well, it's not really 3 months. And he did admit in his presser, whether it was true or not, that, he was giving a 3-month timetable, but, he really didn't know. And, that could be true, obviously. So there's that. All right. The next thing I want to get into is some of these other things. Team Foles, Team Wentz. I think it's stupid. I love both quarterbacks. Yeah, Nick Foles got me my first Lombardi trophy. Think I'm going to talk shit on Nick Foles? Get out of here. But there are some things I did want to get into about Carson Wentz because there are some false narratives that are starting to be formed. So One of the things that I'm hearing now, obviously, Alshon Jeffrey had a huge game against the Rams on Sunday, 160-plus yards, just a beast. Targeted 8 times, caught all 8 targets. But if you look at during the season and how the targets are distributed, because the big knock on Wentz is that he just looks at Ertz and that's it, and he doesn't really go through his progressions. Well, if you look at the targets by Wentz compared to by Foles, Foles actually targets Ertz more. Ertz has 30 targets in 3 games compared to a 9.6 average target rate for Carson Wentz in 11 games. For Alshon Jeffrey, it was 8 targets in 1 game for Nick Foles as opposed to 7.4 with Wentz. So we'll see as the games go along how that kind of works itself out. The other number that I thought was interesting. So Nick Foles threw the ball in an average of 2.19 seconds against the Rams, quickest of any starting quarterback in the NFL. You compare that to Carson Wentz, it's 2.49 seconds. I saw this stat on Twitter, and I saw a lot of people make the assumption that, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense because Nick Foles is getting the ball out quicker, and Carson Wentz, he holds the ball, right? Well, that's not really true. What's going on is this. The offensive line is all of a sudden looking like they're elite again. I mean, for the longest time, and I think they might still lead the league in quarterback hits allowed. I mean, all season long, quarterbacks have been getting pummeled in the backfield, whether it's been Nick Foles or Carson Wentz. So 2.19 seconds compared to 2.49. But when you look at Nick Foles the first 2 weeks, it was 2.79. So 2.79, why? Because the offensive line was struggling. You got to sidestep pressure. It's harder to get the ball out, right? So that's kind of what was happening with Carson Wentz. But the Rams didn't have a pass rush. There was nothing. Nick Foles was able to do whatever he wanted. That's why the ball was getting out real quick. Rams weren't bringing it. Eagles were double-teaming Aaron Donald, and they had nothing. Corey Littleton's got 4 sacks. He's the only one with over 4 on the Rams besides Aaron Donald. That's the recipe to beat the Rams defense. All right, another thing that I looked into. I looked into Carson Wentz's intermediate stats and his deep ball accuracy because that's another thing that's been kind of taken for granted this year. See, Wentz has been really poor after the bye. Like, he's been kind of poor, right? And there's a recency bias because of that. We forget that he was outstanding from like weeks 3 through 8. He was great. And you look at these numbers, his accuracy numbers are better than last year in the intermediate to deep ball accuracy range. Intermediate numbers, 2017, 58.8 completion percentage, 75.4% on target percentage, compared to 2018, 64.4%. and 74.3% on target percentage. So the target percentage actually down like 0.9%, 1.1%, but the completion percentage has gone up. Deep ball accuracy has gone up in both areas. 2017, 33.8% completion percentage, 49.2% on target percentage, compared to this year, 34.1% completion percentage, 54.5% on target percentage on the deep ball. Those numbers are up. So this narrative that Wentz hasn't been as accurate this year, he's not really making throws, quote unquote, because I know Joe Giglio, he tweeted out that Wentz has been missing throws all year, and that's not really the case. We're falling victim into the recency bias, and that's something that a lot of people fall victim into. So those are some thoughts on Wentz and Foles before I get out of here. I got to get off the Sean Braces. Got some PI Live tonight. So tune in for that Facebook page. Check that out tonight. But this video is done. I'm Adrian Fedkiw. I'm out. See ya.